Hey everyone, thank you so much for clicking on this video. It really does mean the world to me that you're willing to sacrifice a few minutes out of your day to consume my content. Today we've got a bit of a heavy video. Sandman has just come out today. I've just finished watching it. I thought it was great. It's going to act as a micro review for that as well. But across the board, everything I see in regards to people talking about the show, no one's actually addressing the story. Rather, they're addressing the fact that they are just there's so much forced diversity in this movie. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of recasting of characters, changing the sexes, changing the races. And ultimately, I just wanted to throw my hat in the ring and give my honest thoughts and opinions on this current trend in not just Hollywood, but across a global scale in regards to trying to be more diverse in the way that storytellers tell their stories, especially in the medium of film. So for full transparency, I'm going to be as delicate and kind and loving in the way I describe what I feel, but I'm not going to change my opinion. What I'm saying is what I believe, but I'm going to try and deliver this in a loving and kind way. Firstly, let's just talk about what I actually thought about the Sandman show, because this is kind of a response to the Sandman. I thought it was great. Great acting, great special effects. Some of it was a little bit like janky, but across the board, I just thought it was a great show. So if you are wanting to watch something that is really gripping, something that's also very gritty though, something that is dark and very gothic, then I would highly recommend that you guys watch The Sandman. So let's talk about the controversy surrounding this show, the forced diversity. And I want to break down what I believe the term forced diversity means as well. Forced diversity means the actual forceful inclusion of minorities or non-traditional characters in a way that can actually seem forceful, in the way that it will either create plot holes or break the law of a defined show. So I'll give you a few examples of what I mean by forced diversity throughout this video, but that's how I'm going to be perceiving forced diversity moving forward. Something that is diverse. Oh, and the power just went out. I'll be right back. Sorry about that. That was load shedding. For those of you that don't know what happens in South Africa, basically load shedding is when the government just turns off your electricity. So I've just hooked up my ring light to a tertiary power source. But look, ultimately I've taken down my notes and my thoughts and feelings, and so I'm going to rely on my book a lot, just because, again, this is a very touchy topic for a lot of different people. So when I give my thoughts and feelings, I want to be open and honest about it, but also make sure that the things I'm going to say are well thought out so that I don't just randomly get attacked in the comments. But ultimately, I have two primary issues when it comes to forced diversity, and I'm going to break those down in quite a bit of detail, but ultimately it relies on politics over story and then the truth versus feelings. So I want to break down this idea of politics over story first though, because what is the point of movies, of cinema, of just entertainment in general? Well, firstly, it's entertainment, yes. And then the other one is it's escapism. We go to the movies, we go to these cinemas, we engage our time and our finances to put ourselves in a situation where we can escape our current reality. That is why cinema and also gaming is such a massive money maker in the world, because it allows us to actually escape our current situations. It allows us as the viewer to go on adventures and to remove ourselves from our current circumstances, because very often our current circumstances are sucky. So what happens is when we put politics over the story, and the reason escapism works is because it's supposed to be guided around a well-written and fantastical story. The issue is when you start to bring in forced diversity, your politics become more important than the story. And so the story suffers as a result. The goal is always escapism and entertainment. When you are trying to escape your current situation, when you are trying to find entertainment in your current situation, the last thing you want to feel is lectured to. And that's what happens a lot with forced diversity. It's a company wanting to make a statement basically straight to you, the viewer, saying something is wrong and this is why. And that's why we have predominantly, and it's going to sound really bad coming from me being a white male, but most of the time we have white male characters that get recast into people of different races or different genders. Now, I'm not saying it never happens the other way. I'm not saying whitewashing is not a thing, because it is. I mean, the Ancient One in the MCU was a massive example of whitewashing. But that's not the purpose of this video. The purpose of this video is strictly to tackle forced diversity. And we can see it in tons of shows that are coming out or have been out, where this idea of forced diversity actually creates plot holes and breaks the existing law of many different franchises. House of the Dragon is a good example of that. I think Bridgerton is a good example of that, where you can actually look at the source material, or you can actually look at proper historical documents, and you can see that the way things have been written now in this fictitious land is not law or historically friendly. I'm going to break down history a little bit just now in truth versus feelings, but especially when it comes to fans of a property, people that have read the books, people that have watched the movies, they also do have an actual attachment to that. And very often people just go, oh, fans are just, you butthurt, or they don't like what's happening with the franchise. And I think it's not that simple. When people truly love a franchise, they want that franchise to be treated with respect. A good example of this, from my personal point of view, is Doctor Who. I love Doctor Who. You guys can't see it, but down here, I've got the entire collection of Doctor Who on DVD. I can tell you right now, Doctor Who started in 1963, starring William Hartnell, went on to Patrick Troughton, John Pertwee, Tom Baker, Peter Davison. It goes on all the way up to where we are now. And I've watched all of it, all 50 plus years of Doctor Who, but I stopped at Jodie Whittaker. Why? Because the moment we had the new showrunners and the new actress Jodie Whittaker come in, story was no longer the primary drive of Doctor Who. It became pushing an agenda and pushing politics. The Doctor's character became incredibly unlikable. The Doctor as a hero, as this person that's supposed to, protect the galaxy, that became a secondary function. Rather than trying to protect the galaxy, rather than trying to save people, the Doctor became this individual who was more interested in, doing what was politically correct. And that ends up becoming an issue when you have, the Daleks invading the planet and you have this world-ending situation. But the showrunners are trying to tell us, yes, these people are bad, but you know who the real villains are? And then they go and they spout something about capitalism, or, there's too many white people in positions of power. And as a viewer, you're sitting there going, cool, I understand what you're trying to say, but surely the big issue is actually the people trying to destroy the planet. And we see that not just in Doctor Who, but even examples of Star Wars. Everyone has, The Last Jedi is by far the most controversial Star Wars film in existence. And a lot of it is because of its political correctness and its forced diversity. I think the forced diversity, especially in The Sandman, got incredibly noticeable. Now, for full transparency, I've never read the Sandman comics or the graphic novels or anything like that. Not once. But I could tell exactly when a character came on where they had been recast their age or their race or their gender or their, age, race, gender. I had my phone open constantly. Every time I saw a character, I was like, I can guarantee you they've race swapped this character or gender swapped this character. I Googled it and I was right. The reason I bring this up is because that's immersion breaking. If I can sit, not even having read the books or the comics or anything like that, and tell you that was a political decision, that was a political move, then that is coming at the cost of your immersion of a film. If a viewer can pick it up like that, without having any prior engagements with a franchise, then you know that you have put your story on the back end and you've made your politics the driving factor behind your story. And so as a viewer, I'm no longer immersed, so I'm no longer entertained, and so that form of escapism no longer exists. So that is why my biggest issue with politics over story exists, because we watch movies to escape from our current reality. If you want to watch movies to be lectured to, then there's documentaries for that. And I watch tons of documentaries. In fact, we have a ton of documentaries reviews on my YouTube channel, so check this out as well. But there's a difference between entertainment and education. And everyone knows that. Then I want to break down the difference between truth and feelings. And what I mean by this is you have historical documents. I mean, we can all just look back and we can see the history of Rome. We can see the history of the British Empire and everything like that. We can look at real life and see what actually happens or happened. And we can do the same for fantasy worlds as well. The Rings of Power that's coming out, there's a massive cry at the moment about the casting of the characters and the races of the characters. And to be honest, I don't necessarily know if I feel like that's necessarily a bad thing that we're casting different people from an employment point of view. But from a respecting the author's point of view, I have an issue. Because when Peter Jackson made the Lord of the Rings films, his goal was to make you know, Tolkien's vision come to life. That was his goal. The showrunners of the Rings of Power have pretty much come out and say, hey, we want to represent our world in this fictitious world. And that becomes an issue because now it's not paying respect to the source material. And that's another thing. Again, people are going to say, oh, fanboys are just butthurt. And I've seen that comment so often, but it's not just because we're getting upset that the work is being changed. We're getting upset because the source material isn't being respected. And that's a massive issue. If it's fixed in law that specific things can't happen, then you just go and change them for the idea of being politically correct. You've gone and you've broken, you've broken the law. And I don't mean law as an L-A-W, like it's not illegal. I'm saying you've broken the law, L-O-R-E, of that fictitious world. And that's a massive issue when it comes to adaptations, is making sure that you respect the source material and you understand the reasons for the material being written that way. If an author has gone ahead, or an artist or anything else has gone and specifically explained a specific thing about their world, and then an adaptation screws that up, it's just showing that the showrunners or the movie makers, whoever's making the adaptation, either A, didn't do their homework and doesn't understand why the world works the way the world works in that fictitious setting, or they're not respecting the work the author has written or the movie director has made, etc., etc., etc. It's all about respecting the original version, because if you are adapting something, you are looking at what someone has written. Now, again, it's also different in regards to an author taking their work and adapting their work. I mean, that's what's happening now with The Sandman, and that's exactly what happened with Invincible, the series as well. We had the comic book writers come in and actually write the script for the story and help with the casting decisions and everything like that. And so then us as fans also have to understand, cool, we can respect the original source material, but then surely we also have to understand that if the author is making changes to their own work, do we allow that, yes or no? So there's a lot that we can talk about, because every topic and example is also so incredibly, incredibly different. So those are my two massive points for my own personal viewing of a show or a property. If you make the story the primary focus, not politics, then most of the time I won't care who you cast. This is probably a bad example because it's not an adaptation or anything like that. But Django Unchained is one of my favorite movies. I know it's my wife's favorite movie of all time, but we're sitting here being two white people. You know, from a gender studies or identity politics point of view, we shouldn't be able to relate to the character of Django Unchained because we don't share his experiences, we don't share his race, we don't share his identity. But no, the issue with that is you've put aside the story. When the story comes first, when the story is primary, you can actually relate to any character because you can put yourself in that character's point of view. The moment you start introducing politics and saying your identity is the most important aspect of your character, that's when things get a little bit murky, because the truth of the matter is I can bring in my best friend. He's a white male, my age. We have very similar viewpoints on the world. We have very similar religious views, but we are actually completely different people. On paper, we're supposed to be the same person, but we're completely different people. And that's the issue with making politics more important than story. And the same goes for adapting work and making sure that things are historically accurate. When you start to put people's feelings as something that's more important than the overall story you're trying to tell or the historical accuracy of what you're trying to tell, you're going to create a story that's actually hollow, because you're not serving the story, you're serving people. So yeah, guys, this was a long-winded video, and I hope what I'm saying is actually making sense. I'd love to know what you guys think down in the comments down below. My dogs are getting very loud and crazy, so I don't know if the mic is picking it up, but if it is, I'm very sorry. But guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I really do appreciate it. Like this video if you haven't yet, subscribe to my channel, and I hope to see you again in another video.